In the depths of the Atlantic Ocean, where sunlight never reaches and the pressure crushes any known form of life, a team of scientists embarked on an unprecedented mission. Dr. Samuel Hargrove, a renowned oceanographer, led the expedition. Their goal was to explore a recently discovered trench known as the Abyss of Erebus, a place so deep that even the most advanced sonars could not fully map it. The submersible, named Nautilus II, descended slowly into the darkness. On board were Dr. Hargrove, marine biologist Dr. Elena Morales, and systems engineer Mark Reynolds. As they ventured deeper into the abyss, communication with the surface became increasingly intermittent until it was completely cut off. At a depth of 10,000 meters, the Nautilus II came to a halt. The sensors detected a massive structure, something that should not exist in such an inhospitable place. It was a city, or what appeared to be a city, made of a black, shiny substance that absorbed the light from the submersible's beams. The walls were covered in strange hieroglyphs, symbols that seemed to move and change shape when stared at for too long. Dr. Morales, fascinated, insisted on leaving the submersible to collect samples. Despite Hargrove's warnings, she suited up in a pressure suit and ventured into the darkness. What she found was beyond anything they could have imagined. The walls of the city were not made of stone or metal, but of an organic, living substance. And then, she heard a whisper, an echo that resonated in her mind, speaking words in a language she could not understand, but that filled her with indescribable terror. Meanwhile, inside the Nautilus II, Hargrove and Reynolds began experiencing visions. They saw shadows moving at the edges of their sight and heard whispers that came from nowhere. The submersible screens displayed distorted images, as if the city itself was interfering with their systems. Suddenly, the lights went out. In the darkness, Hargrove felt something cold and wet sliding across his arm. He screamed, but the sound was swallowed by the void. When the lights came back on, Reynolds was gone. Only his suit remained empty, as if his body had been stripped away in an instant. Dr. Morales returned to the submersible, but she was not the same. Her eyes glowed with an unnatural light, and she spoke in a language Hargrove did not recognize. She showed him an artifact she had found, a black sphere that seemed to contain an infinite void within. "It's the key," she whispered. "The ritual must be completed." Hargrove, desperate, tried to reason with her, but it was useless. Dr. Morales began reciting words in that ancient language, and the sphere started to vibrate. The submersible shook, and the walls of the city seemed to come alive, moving and twisting as if they were alive. In a final effort to stop her, Hargrove tried to snatch the sphere away, but it was too late. The ritual was completed, and a crack opened in the fabric of reality. From the crack, something began to emerge, an entity that could not be described in words, a mass of tentacles, eyes, and mouths that screamed in a chorus of voices that echoed in Hargrove's mind. The entity looked at him, and in that moment, he knew the truth. The city was not a construction but a prison, and they had released its occupant. The entity spread, consuming everything in its path, and Hargrove felt his mind disintegrate under the weight of knowledge no human should possess. The Nautilus II never returned to the surface. The last transmissions received were fragments of audio, whispers in an unknown language, and a final scream that was abruptly cut off. The Erebus Trench was sealed off, declared a forbidden zone, and the expedition was erased from official records. But in the depths of the ocean, the city remains alive, waiting. And in the dreams of those who have heard the echo of the void, the entity whispers, calling to those foolish enough to answer. In the years that followed, strange incidents were reported worldwide. Fishing vessels disappeared without a trace, and survivors spoke of lights in the depths and whispers that drove them to madness. Scientists studying the abyss began experiencing visions and recurring nightmares, all centered around the city beneath the sea. Some even claimed to have seen the entity in their dreams, its tentacles reaching out to them, its eyes glowing with an unnatural light. One such scientist was Dr. Alan Whitaker, a colleague of Hargrove who had been involved in planning the expedition to the Abyss of Erebus. After the disappearance of the Nautilus II, Whitaker became obsessed with uncovering the truth. He spent years researching, gathering fragments of information and testimonies from those who had had close encounters with the unknown. Finally, he managed to pinpoint the exact coordinates of the trench and assembled a new team for a second expedition. The new submersible, named Deep Explorer, descended into the depths with a mix of hope and dread. Whitaker knew they were playing with forces they did not understand, but his curiosity and desire for answers drove him forward. As they approached the city, the instruments began to fail, and the lights flickered before going out completely. In the darkness, Whitaker felt the presence of something ancient and powerful, something watching him from the shadows. When the lights came back on, the city was there, larger and more ominous than ever. Whitaker and his team ventured into its streets, encountering the same hieroglyphs that Hargrove and his team had seen years before. But this time, the symbols seemed alive, moving and shifting, as if trying to communicate with them. Whitaker felt an irresistible pull toward the center of the city, where a massive structure loomed above everything else. As he approached, Whitaker realized the structure was a temple, and inside it was an altar holding a black sphere identical to the one Dr. Morales had found. He knew touching it would be a mistake, but he couldn't resist. When his fingers brushed the surface of the sphere, a surge of energy coursed through him, and he saw visions of an ancient, forgotten universe, of gods sleeping in the depths of space and time, and of the entity they had released, a being that existed outside reality as they knew it. Whitaker understood then that the city was not just a prison but also a portal, a place where the veil between worlds was thinnest. And he knew the entity was not alone. There were others, many others, waiting for their moment to emerge. With a final effort, Whitaker tried to destroy the sphere, but it was too late. The entity reached for him, and his mind disintegrated under the weight of knowledge no human should possess. The Deep Explorer never returned to the surface. The last transmissions were fragments of audio, whispers in an unknown language, and a final scream that was abruptly cut off. The Erebus Trench was sealed once more, but the entity had already left its mark on the world. In the years that followed, more incidents were reported, more disappearances, and more people claimed to have heard the echo of the void in their dreams. And so, the city beneath the sea continues to wait, its darkness lurking in the depths, calling to those foolish enough to answer. For in the abyss, something ancient and powerful stirs, and its awakening is only a matter of time.